Welcome to episode 830 of Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I will be joined by Jen, the Arcane Observer, in a few minutes here. Tonight we will also have another guest, who I will introduce in a bit here as well. We'll be talking about orbs. And, of course, for those that don't know, well, we'll get into that. I'll get to the usual introduction first. Thank you all for being here and listening to the show. You can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and ways to listen and ways to support the show at the website, which is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And you can support the show in a couple of different ways. You can sign up for the Patreon page where you get extra content. Or you can also check out the merchandise store and get shirts and bags and aprons and more to come in the future as well, with designs made by friends of the show on them. And support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. Also, please check out the links in every episode description for friends of the show. That would, of course, be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who is the co-host of the show on Saturdays, and has her own channel and everything. And also Michael Strange and Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows 24/7, along with mine as well. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun, I think. This is a topic that I don't know if you can ever really completely say enough about it or cover it all in one show or two shows, because things keep happening and people have experiences with these things that we call orbs. And so yeah, this I think this would be a good topic. Thank you all for being here and listening in. And I've had some experiences, and we can get into that later if there's time. But I want to welcome everyone here listening in. And let's start with welcoming Jen. Thank you for joining me on the show here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to the show topic. And there is so much about orbs, especially lately right now. There's been a lot of things about the orbs, that are kind of the UFO orb aspect. So that'll be neat to talk about too. And then the idea too, because I heard previously sort of, I guess you would call it like a type of theory of the orbs in people's houses being a type of drone orb in themselves. They were kind of like these, I guess maybe a surveillance system of some kind or something. So it would be interesting to see where this all goes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when it comes to this idea of just an orb of light, there are a lot of ways, I think, to generate light and to make energy, and so they could be any number of things. And we also have another guest on the show tonight. I will bring up onto the stage here in a moment, or give him permission anyway. That's how that works. Let's see here. Now I forgot how to do this. I forgot how to do a show. Isn't that funny? Oh, that's what I do. Never mind. I know what I'm doing. I swear. I really do. No, but anyway, invite to speak. That's the thing I click on. Eric is also a friend of the show. I can't remember. I think you've been on before, Eric. Maybe I'm blanking now on that. I know we've talked before, all kinds of chats and everything off show.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I thought I did once, but I can't remember for sure.
It's when you do so many shows, it all kind of blurs together, and I didn't think to look and see if there's a way to find out if you've been or not. But thank you for joining us and offering to talk about this as well.
Thank you for having me.
So there's a couple things I kind of wanted to mention before we get real deep into this, and that is there are times where people think that they're seeing orbs in pictures or in videos, and those are not necessarily the orbs we're talking about here, I don't think. I've heard that different problems with cameras and or dust or bugs can look like orbs. And that's another issue in and of itself. But what I want to focus on here is not just that, and not just the things that they could be outside of anything anomalous, but the anomalies themselves, and go from there. So I don't know if you want to start, Eric, with the historical side of things, because that's what I found to be amazing about this, which is that this is not something new.
Sure, that would be fine. I don't mind at all. I'll go kind of backwards through time, but one of the sightings of the sort of thing, and the one to start with, is not as Orby as the other two, but in Strassland, Switzerland, on the 8th of April in 1665, there were 6 fishermen off of Strassland Harbor who said that they seen a flock of what they thought was a flock of birds flying in formation that then morphed into wooden sailing warships in the sky. They then said that the ships engaged in a thunderous air battle manned by ghostly figures, and that after this battle took place at dusk, a large, giant, round, orbish disc hovered above St. Nicholas Church, which was the church in their city. The next day, the fishermen, the 6 fishermen who had initially cited these sightings, were found trembling in pain, it says, which was given on what they called a broadboard, which was like newspapers of that time. They were like wood carvings in essence that you could pass around. Also pamphlets and engraving in these broadsheets. All of this was reported by the local authorities as far and wide as they could get it. There was no suppression or anything like that. And let's see, other things that were talked about was a sharp temperature inversion at that time, that the temperature was uncharacteristically low. Then, if you go back to the 1500s, specifically, let's see, 1566, in Basel, in July and August, on the 27th and 28th of July, at sunset, many people reported that the sun completely lost its radiance and appeared to be the size of a full moon in a blood red sky that was bathed in a fiery hue. So they were saying that essentially the sun had dimmed down, but the sky around it was blood red and extremely bright, and that at dawn a blood moon also rose. Then on August 7th at dawn, 1566, they reported that large black spheres appeared before the sun and was moving quickly through the sky as if fighting each other. And that some of the black spheres turned fiery red and crumbled and fell to the ground and then smoked and burned out. And their interpretation of this was that these spheres, or these orbs, were having some sort of an aerial battle, complete with some of them dropping out of the sky and being destroyed. This was also seen by a large number of people, like 20, 30, 40 people, and was documented in pamphlets and in broadsheets by Samuel Kokoas and illustrated by another guy. And these were passed around and not suppressed in any way. And I tried to get the word out on these events because so many people had seen them, and it was such a bizarre situation. So basically, the people involved in the second one was the townspeople. However many people had seen it in the town, apparently there was a huge amount that had seen it in the town. And then, just a few years later, in 1561, in Nuremberg, which is 14th of April, and this event is probably a little more well known than the other two, the Nuremberg event, and it was in early morning at dawn. There was many men and women who saw numerous shapes, globes, cylinders, crescents, and crosses moving in what they said were having an aerial battle in the air against each other. They didn't describe anything falling out of the sky, but they also all described a large black triangular object that appeared in the midst of these chaotic battles going on with these orbs and crescents and crosses. And they said that black and red spheres fell to the ground from this black triangle amid smoke. And it was recorded by Hans Glaser on a broadsheet and illustrated with woodcut imagery that matched these descriptions, and it was published all over the place that it could be. And so you have these three things in history where multiple people, often of a town, have seen spheres in the sky or orbs in the sky battling each other, black spheres, red spheres, sometimes draped across the conditions of the sky that are described in a bizarre way as being blood red or that sort of thing. Back in the 15 and 1600s in Switzerland, in Denmark, in Germany. And the history goes back even further than that. There is a ancient Egyptian scroll that's called the Tully Scroll, and it's named after Alberto Tully, who was the director of the Egyptian section of the Vatican Museum. He had discovered a papyrus that he had copied down and taken back to the Vatican, and it's from about 3,480 some years ago, 1480 BC, was witnessed by many people and was in the time of Tutmosis III. And the scroll depicts what many people believe to be the first orb or UFO sighting. There is a Cedric Leonard who has a translation of the scroll. It's 3 small paragraphs. Is it okay if I read it?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so, this is from way over 3,000 years ago. And it says, in the year 22 of the 3rd month of winter, 6th hour of the day, among the scribes of the houses of life, it was found that a strange flying disc was coming in the sky. It had no head. The breath of its mouth emitted a foul odor. Its body was 1 rod in length and 1 rod in width. That's 16.5 feet is how long a rod is. It had no voice. It came toward His Majesty's house. Their heart became confused through it, and they fell upon their bellies. They went to the king to report it. His Majesty ordered that the scrolls located in the House of Life be consulted. His Majesty meditated on all these events which were now going on. After several days had passed, they became more numerous in the sky than ever. They shined in the sky more than the brightness of the sun and extended to the limits of the 4 supports of heaven. Powerful was the position of the flying discs, the fiery discs. The army of the king looked on with His Majesty in their midst. It was after the evening meal when the discs ascended even higher in the sky to the south. Fish and other velocities rained down from the sky, a marvel never before known since the foundation of the country. And His Majesty caused incense to be brought to appease the heart of Amun-Ra, the god of the 2 lands. And it was ordered that the event be recorded for His Majesty in the annals of the House of Life to be remembered forever. That is the scroll that was written in 1480 BC and put in the library, and is often considered to be the first description of an orb sighting, described as a fiery disk, perhaps an orb, depending on how you'd express that. But the Egyptians at this time had a vast knowledge of celestial phenomenon and aerial and weather phenomenon, and had a good grasp of astronomy. So for them to be mistaking this fiery disk as something like a perihelia or a sundog, which is an astronomical weather event that's caused by the sun shining through ice crystals in the upper atmosphere of the Earth, does not in any way correlate to any of these descriptions, all of which describe these things as moving and being added and staying for days at a time in many cases. So it doesn't seem to be easily explained away in the normal Occam's razor type of argument, like, it's a sundog or a perihelia. So these are four events in history that describe these encounters with orbs that were seen by multiple people, that were, at least in the 15 and 1600s, interpreted as spiritual events. Like in all cases where the report was being propagated, the interpretation of seeing these orbs, these black and red orbs fight each other in the sky, was that God was angry with us and wants us to be more pious. And one of the broadsheets by Hans Glaser, I think it was, even ended like in a call for people to pray and repent from whatever sins that they had supposedly been doing, that caused this evil portent in the sky to occur. So they were interpreted totally as a spiritual event and not per se an extraterrestrial event. And that's one of the reasons why none of the news was suppressed, and why they were actually trying to get the news out, because they wanted people to see it, and they wanted these people to pray and be forgiven for their sins so that this didn't happen again. And the first three events in the 15 and 1600s are unique in that they happened between the 15th and 17th century, which is when the witch craze was occurring, and almost all portents of any kind were interpreted through that lens of the Malus Maleficarum, the book that was called the Hammer of the Witches. And so when things like this happened, it was usually steered in that particular direction. These events stand out as not being blamed on that particular phenomenon and kind of stand alone in themselves, even though they have the flavor of a mass hysteria. They are distinctly different from any of the descriptions of witchcraft or that sort of phenomenon that was going on in Germany, Scotland, England of this time period, and then the newly found Americans. So just want to bring that to the people going to talk orbs and stuff, that there's a long history of people seeing orbs and wanting to record what they see.
Yeah, that's amazing. Also amazing to me that all those events are really amazing, but just the idea of that the one in Egypt, and even the black orbs. See, I've in recent years I've found people who have said they've seen black orbs, not huge ones in the sky, but just smaller ones in and around their homes, and I had never heard of anything similar before like that. So that to me is fascinating. And I do think that two things as far as orbs go, darkness can be, it's not so much about the color or the possibility of light, or the idea of it being made of light, but just being made of something, anything that is unusual. And so darkness fits in too. But also the shape-changing aspect of them. So they don't necessarily have to be just circles or spheres that are in the sky the whole time. There's so many reports of them changing shape to be other things or to just go smaller or larger, have bumps or spikes on them or tendrils coming from them. I've heard of and read of. So that's amazing. But also the Egyptian one, the raining down of fish, if I heard that right, from the sky.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that remind anyone of something that I've been reading for a while now on other shows? A little bit. Something by that Fort guy, that Charles Fort character. And that's just amazing to me because he's talking about things in the 1800s, and we know there are things they're rare now, but these kinds of falls of weird objects do still happen every once in a while, according to reports up to this day. But then you also have it going back that far, and if they're like you were saying, they're not just the phenomenon out in space that are caused by the sun or natural celestial objects. Well, the fact that there was fish falling from the sky, kind of that tracks. That doesn't seem like that'd be easily to arrange if that was just a trick of light or whatever, or a regular light that people back then were aware of.
Yeah, it said fish and other volatilities rained down from the sky, and polarities are like kind of like a miasma. It's like a
Okay.
stinky vapor or some sort of haze or radiated kind of a thing that's falling down at the same time, or maybe a bad rain or something like that. But something that's not very viscous, that's like misty, that's also
Mm-hmm.
raining down along with the fish. I mean, maybe like stale water or something. I don't know.
Right.
Like the
Yeah.
fish in the water, just well, we're done with this.
Yeah. That's amazing, and that just that similarity between that and then again the things that Fort reported on later. But yeah, no, that's really amazing. The sightings and that, and I do think it is. That's one thing that is different between now and or then and now, where anyone that reports, oh, I saw a light, well, people think, oh, well, you just saw ball lightning, which is a whole other thing that we can talk about throughout the rest of the show here. This idea that it's ball lightning, which is, if I'm not mistaken, is something that has only recently been kind of discovered or researched or figured out more about that to begin with anyway.
It's my understanding that recently we've found that it actually can exist and probably has manifested, just like sprites. The
Mm-hmm.
lightning that happens in the upper atmosphere. We didn't think that those things existed, but eventually we caught them on camera and was able to see them. So sprites and ball lightning are two plasma phenomenon that have recently been proven to been caught on camera.
Yeah, that is amazing. And also in the chat here, Don asks, anyone else question the star in quotation marks of Bethlehem? Yeah, I question a lot of things. That's a whole other sort of now it's a different interpretation of ancient or older texts from around the world. Is that if you can put it in the context of aliens, of extraterrestrials or other beings, that maybe these ancient texts we're talking about, but just in different words that were more familiar to them at the time. But I do want to make sure we have Jen here in the conversation. So what do you think about this whole thing so far, Jen?
Oh, from listening to what Eric is saying, I mean, it makes me think so much that there must be some kind of direct sentience with them. I mean, ultimately, the question would be, are they actually drones of some kind that are being used to see from far off? Or are they actually participants and unto themselves they appear as these orbs, but they are their own kind of sovereign being, which I wonder which it would be. Would they be more of like a surveillance system? But, at the same time, I feel like possibly just the way it seems that they may be maybe even relatable to like the concept of angels or messengers, that kind of thing, that they are a sort of surveyor system, or that they are an all-encompassing intelligence unto themselves in some way. Obviously, receiving information and then initiating what kind of reactions they will have, and then they're operable independently of whatever their source might be. So, are they in a constant state of appearing as that shape and form, having an intelligence to them? And that's really unique because you see that with the planets and the other spheres all being described, and the stars as well being described as having their own sort of intelligence, that they are a type of knowledgeable, intelligent being, a personification we're putting onto them, but it must be interpreted that way if they are actively participating in extravaganzas such as the wars in the skies that people witnessed and things like that. It's been described before with the planets as well, that they are almost that they are sentient spheres in some way. But I'm very excited to hear everything that Eric has to say about this, because I think that he has a great deal of information to share with us.
Yeah, yep. That already it's been just it's funny because I realized as you were talking, Eric, I have heard of the Nuremberg case. I just forgot where it was at, but I was thinking about that the other day. I remember hearing about the battle going on in the sky and how people were interpreting it, and that is something that was different then. They didn't try to hide it. They tried to interpret it as well as they could and get everyone to be aware of it. But it's just amazing that that's something that happened back then that way. But now it's the almost the complete opposite, unless it fits into someone's narrative of how they think it's supposed to be.
Yes, yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, they were really hoping by spreading the word that God was angry with people, that they would have a line of power and control upon the people. So part of their reasoning for sending these things around in broadsheets like the one I just put in the chat was to control the populace into doing what they thought was right. They were interpreting this event to be a particular thing and then using it to hopefully whip the people in line. For instance, one of the broadsheets, I think it's the one that I put in the chat, at the end it calls for a Bubba, which is a like German for like a repenting, becoming pious sort of situation. And one of them, I think it's this one too, ends in a prayer. So they worked with the clergy and artists to spread the word to make this, but the point is that, like Jen was saying, the orbs are eternal in a sense. Like, they've been here as long as we have, and perhaps they may not be as powerful as they were in the times that I'm talking about, where these things and these events happened, because they do talk about them fighting. So the implication is that perhaps they lost a battle, and now they're not as strong as they used to be, not as numerous as they used to be, and so they appear smaller and they appear less frequently and that sort of thing. But they can take on all these guises too, like, you know, you were talking with the shape shifting and that sort of thing. Like, not only that, but they can be interpreted as spiritual creatures, like Jen was talking about, like angels or some of the hierarchy, or mondrones, you know, or something of that nature. Or they can be interpreted as UFOs, or they can be interpreted as bokas, which is this Japanese word for like a lens reflection, where you're seeing this reflection in the lens of your camera. And so they can be all of these things. They can be reminders or guides or will-o'-the-wisps or any of these sort of things. So orbs have this characteristic of being something that's been with us in mythology and legend and history for a really, really long time, at least as long as we've been, you know, writing things down. And it seems like they were a bit more prominent and powerful back in the day.
Yeah, you don't hear too much now about these kinds of events with giant orbs, and they do seem most of the time, anyway, as far as from what I've read and heard, They are smaller, and I do wonder if it has to do with maybe differences in the planet and or the sun's electromagnetic fields and all that, and also the fact that now we have so many other devices. We have devices that give off energy and take in energy all around us that were not around in those times in the 1600s. That can maybe have also have effects on these things. I don't know, but that seems possible.
Yeah, no, it does because you can imagine if these things manifested that they might be tapping into the ley lines, tapping into energy that's given off from the earth, the very stuff that Tesla talked about. And like you pointed out, as we've curtailed energy and brought it into being tamed and along wires and in plugs and that sort of thing, and batteries and stuff, and it's activated at our will everywhere, that it could be that it's not as easy to tap into those same energy lines that existed before with all the noise background created by our modern electronics. And so they may not be able to manifest as adequately as they once were able to. If it wasn't that they lost a fight, it could be that sort of thing too.
Yeah, yep, that's the thing. But then the other amazing thing about this is then does that mean the ones that we here on the planet and also astronauts and everyone out there that's gone into space, they say they've seen them in space as well. So are those the same? Are they separate? And I do think it's important to point out the way that we see these orbs in all these different places. We see them in people's homes and buildings. We see them out in the forests. We see them in the sky. But then people have also seen them in space. And I do always wonder: is the light that we're seeing just the being made by something, and then it can be different. There can be different sources for that light, but all we see are the lights or the things that they change into. And so it's hard to figure out what is what because of that. So yeah, I wonder about that as well. So what? So yeah, you're welcome. You two, you and Eric and Jen, you're welcome to jump in whenever you want to, just so you know. So no problem
Yeah,
there.
it's a lot to think about. Just the idea that these orbs are an expression of these other beings, or that it's a type of, because you can have a main source somewhere else that is casting itself out. We have the idea of out-of-body experiences where human beings, could be, for example, in a sleep state, yet they are casting themselves out of body somewhere else. And there have been many accounts of certain out of monasteries, out of definitely very prominent in the in Hinduism and Buddhism, accounts of people being in one location, perhaps in a meditative state, and then being seen somewhere else. So the concept that there could be either that being, it's one and the same. The being could be at one location and then using that force at a distance as a distant view of sort, or it could be actively participating in the same way you would in like a dream state where you're actively participating in one realm though you are in another, but it's projecting into this reality. And it's prominently obvious, and it's seen in this with this type of correlation of the orb space, but they have an effect on the physical reality around them in many accounts, and as Eric described, and then in general that they have an effect just on the environment. I've seen videos recently that they talk about with these orbs that when aircraft try to approach, that they can become disabled by the field of the orb. I don't know if those would be considered the same thing, but it seems similar.
Yeah, and there's reports of orbs coming into and going out of devices as well. I've read about. Again, it's really weird how all this this happens with aircraft up in the sky, but then also devices down here on the ground that people see them going into and out of. I also just wanted to read something here in the chat. Joey El Demente, and I'm sorry if I say that wrong, Joey, but he says, when still at my education, I recall early in my psychology courses, I conducted a case study of a family. 8 individual members of the family in total agreed to work with me. There were many who were not interested or refused to even speak. This family had many shared unexplainable unexplainable happenings. Many shared experiences at same date and time at separate locations. Many of these happenings involved orbs of light. So that's fascinating as well. And for anyone that hasn't joined the Discord yet, when you listen to these shows, I do recommend it because there's Eric is posting some great images there in the chat of things associated with this. So, but yeah, it's amazing. I'm just blown away by the fact that there were these dark orbs seen, because we've all heard of all the different colors of orbs, but I've never heard of dark orbs of darkness until, again, finding reports online, but then also these historical events. Also the Black Triangle, not to sidetrack, but also can't help it sidetrack. The Black Triangle in that one account that you read, Eric, is also amazing, because where have we heard that? And I mean, it's an obvious sort of thing to mention, but there's no that is ancient times.
Yeah, those images are all broadsheets. Those were the things that were sent out to the public to describe what was seen. And in each case, the artist was hearing multiple testimonials in the city if they themselves didn't see it, right? And the shocking thing to me about it, the two shocking things to me about it, is none of these orbs were described as being electrical or holographic or in any way projected or that sort of thing. Like, they were all described as being red or black or solid or smoking or that sort of thing. So they're really described as being solid things. And when you look at all of those broadsides, it looks like there's so many of them in the sky. Like, it's like I'm feeling like in my mind that the artist is listening, and one of the townspeople are like, "No, man, there was more than that. No,
Yeah.
more. No, look, the sky was completely filled with this stuff. And hey, don't forget there was smoke. Like, if you look at one of them, you can see the smoke coming up from like crash things, and the sun's in the middle just hanging out, going, what's going on? And but I mean, and they've got the cylinders and the crosses and the black triangle, and it's almost like people said, hey, don't forget this. We seen that big black triangle, and there was rods too. Yeah, I seen a rod. Yeah, and it looked like, it's a crazy picture to be showing that if these people weren't saying this is what we've seen to an artist, and an artist just had to conceive of a portent from God, I don't think that the artist would interpret that portent from God to be this weird multicolored balls, crosses, and triangles and cylinders, right? It would be something more obviously, iconically identified as being the subtext of religious repenting, right? So this looks like somebody in the 1500s was trying to describe a space battle or something, right? It's kind of strange, and why they would choose to interpret that. Even the one up at the top that's in black and white has all of these different color, like black and white spheres with the sun in the middle, and they fill the sky, and they show all the people down there just looking, going on like, man, this is so weird. Then we've never seen this, and it's going to make the news. I mean, even back then, it's going to make the news, man.
And it's and the thing with orbs. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, no, finish what you're saying real quick, and I'll just come after that.
Oh, okay. The thing with orbs, too, yes, the lights are most common, it seems, but there are reports of people seeing orbs of what appear to be almost metal, but not quite metal, and that are also giving off light. So there's different kinds of orbs. That's the amazing thing, too, is there's the most common type that people think of, which is the light or the energy. But then there's all other kinds of things where they seem to be physical, just like in those descriptions. and they seem to be able to, but then also pass through things or dissolve into things or come out of solid things. So there's all these things that are being reported way back when and up until now. But sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Not at all. I think, I'm wondering about the interpretation as far as who is interpreting what the interaction with these orbs would be when they were trying to describe, for example, as Eric was saying, and that people saw it. Well, not people saw it. They were told by the priests, or they were told by, I guess, the wise, whoever the wise were at that time, or whoever the informers were of what they wanted to kind of influence upon humanity. But there was, the interpretation of it. In the case of whenever Moses, or when any of these different accounts of any type of authoritative figure in history, when they have had encounters with what appeared to be God or something of the kind, like in the case with Moses, when he went up onto the mountain and then there was all this lightning and there was all this natural phenomenon that was going on, and they say that when he went up into it, and there was a great deal of this darkness, sort of a cloud, and all of this activity going on of the kind. But when he came down, that he shone as if with horns, like that he was affected by this himself, like he was somehow being in contact and being allowed to be in contact at that time. And we're not even sure exactly what kind of, if Moses even was. I mean, the history of the past that they are talking about and the timelines are very difficult to interpret. But the way that would be interpreted, or the way that the effect of what these orbs or spheres or intelligences, however you would say, what kind of message they would have for humanity, if anything, and that they seem to be are they intimately intertwined with humanity, or are they truly just existing in their own sphere of their own existence of reality, of interactions with each other and with other celestial effects of some kind, and humans being sort of a mere, just from an observational perspective, interpreting it? Or did we have a direct, they do seem to have an interest in humanity over and over again and the effects of what humans are doing. But is it because, as we've talked about, maybe that there was some sort of interaction that eventually occurred, or was there a weakening of some kind? But humans interpreting the communication of some type of, it's not even fair to say species, just an incredible phenomenon of obvious intelligence and sentience and reactionary, and I've heard accounts too. I mean, when we're talking about Skinwalker Ranch, where dogs or other people account for this, where animals approach these orbs and they are basically incinerated to some extent. So there's like that as well. It's it's really strange.
Yep, and there's reports of these orbs almost acting as portals for things coming out of them or going into them. The ones that are more based on just light or energy, which I find to be fascinating, because if it's a portal, why is it moving around? Is it a portal? Is it more of a vehicle for different things? Or is it both? I mean, that's something we don't know. So yeah, that's and this is making me think of just the way people see masses of light or darkness, even that they're not really an orb shape, but they do change shape. And I wonder, do those start out somewhere as orbs, or are those separate, or are they all connected? And it is amazing how with orbs and with lights and all that is present in every kind of anomalous thing that people talk about out there. That's the lights are connected with supposedly being ghosts, possibly, or spiritual energy. They're connected with Bigfoot creatures out there, where people have seen these lights around Bigfoot or Sasquatch and seen it coming into or going out of the light. And of course, they're associated with things in the sky, being UFOs of a kind. I've even heard of lights, what appears to be just light, like a giant orb or a medium-sized orb in the sky, suddenly changing and to where it does look like a craft, a metal craft of some kind, or the opposite. So that's a whole other thing. Are these lights? Are they portals? Are they just cloaks? Are they both? I don't know, but so yeah, I just wonder about that. How does all that work? How is it all connected that way? Is it just connected because of the energy or the light, or is there something else deeper besides that? So,
For
go ahead.
me, I when I think of the Strasbourg, Nuremberg, and Basel incidents, all of those are described as specifically fighting amongst themselves and paying apparently no attention to us or what we were doing, with the possible exception of Strasbourg, who after the battle, a orb or a disc went and hovered over St. Nicholas Church. So aside from that, they all just simply are describing battles, and they seem to be unconcerned with what people are doing. So in the Nuremberg event even describes spheres coming out of the black triangle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if I think portal or if I think carrier ship, but either way, it seemed to be dispensing some of these orbs, if not all of these orbs. And so the thing that's striking is that they're fighting themselves, right? But with the telescroll, it doesn't seem to be the case. They don't say that these fiery discs are combating themselves. They say that they come and they hang out, and then some more come and hang out, and then they fly up into the sky and release like some fish and some noxious fumes, sort of a thing, which does seem like they have a direct interest in us, like that they were there for a reason, some sort of expectation or something, and then split or whatever. So it's it's hard. The odd thing is that if they're battling each other, if there's some sort of battle going on, then what happened? What's happened in the last 3,000 years or the last 1,000 years?
Right. Yeah. Why would they battle? And how do they? I mean, there's some that did go down, and the rest. I also am curious with the one in that scroll. If at that time, if anyone had ever seen anything coming out of the water anywhere, and just it didn't get recorded, because if some of these craft did come out of the water, if again it's trying to make a story here basically in my mind of why and what they were doing. If they were doing some kind of experiment and they were in the water and then came out of it, then that could possibly explain some of the fish and the bad water and other stuff that was coming down. So was that an accident or not? Did they mean to go in the water or not? Did they even go in water or not? If they didn't go into water, how did that water and the fish come down?
Well, if you like, I've got two translations. First one was Cedric, apologist.
Funny enough, you're breaking up there, Eric, which is kind of ironic.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
As a result,
yeah, I don't know. Technology is fun, but yeah, you're still breaking up there, Eric. But you're welcome to keep on talking, and if it clears up, we can go from there.
Yeah, sometimes it clears
I'd be
up.
happy to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sometimes it does clear up, just
Yeah.
through.
No, I was just saying that the first translation of that scroll that I read was Cedric Leonard, who was an anthropologist.
Okay.
And I have another translation of the same scroll that was done by Prince Boris D. Reichholtz. If you want, I can read his translation. There's only two translations, and they're equally about the same length. And his is a little different. I could read that if you want to compare.
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, the way that the first translated the scroll was In the year 22, third month of the winter, sixth hour of the day, the scribes of the house of life found it was a circle of fire that was coming in the sky. Though it had no head, the breath of its mouth had a foul odor. Its body, 1 rod long and 1 rod large, had no voice. They hearts became confused through it. Then they laid themselves on their bellies. They went to the king to report it. His majesty ordered, has been examined as to all which is written in the papyrus rolls of the house of life. His majesty was meditating upon what happened. Now, after some days had passed over these things, lo, they were more numerous than anything. They were shining in the sky more than the sun to the limits of the four supports of heaven. Powerful was the position of the fire circles. The army of the king looked on, and his majesty was in the midst of it. It was after supper. Thereupon they went up higher, directed to the south. Fishes and volatiles fell down from the sky. It was a marvel never occurred since the foundation of this land. Caused his majesty to be brought incense to pacify the hearth. What happened in the book of the house of life to be remembered for the eternity. So that was his translation of that same scroll.
I really do think that these orbs have an intelligence system amongst themselves that is, from an onlooker perspective, it is separate from our realm. That they are interacting and we are just these bystanders in a way, but that there has become an interlinking of kind, because obviously, well, I mean, in a lot of the lore, they talk about that there were these entire worlds occurring, like with the Fae folk particularly, where they talk about the Seelie and the Unseelie court, or you have the accounts of the angels and how they were not interfering with mankind, but then eventually there was some interaction. They were just before that observing, but then they began to directly interact. So you have this sort of drawing people up into the sort of the drama of the world that they were having, and that humanity kind of fit nicely in there. And then there began sort of influence upon humanity going back and forth, that they were more ingrained. They were always intended to be a part of the creation, and we see that. But how much they became ingrained, and to the extent in all of these accounts and the books, for example, of like with the books of Enoch and things like that, and the faith, like not religions, but the Fae belief systems were still talking about that. And when people were still talking about the jinn out of Islam and all of the accounts of how Iblis and the accounts of the creation, that they were a part of the creation of humanity and the giving of the intelligences to humanity. Eventually there began to become this war and anonymity between humanity and these forces of smokeless flame. Some have interpreted it to be as if plasma, and that it had an intelligence to it, that it had full account in immortality, that it was neither dead nor alive. It's just a force of intelligence from the universe, so to speak, or from the essence of existence, that they did seem to have their own interactions outside of our realm, and that we were observing that from afar, and then began to become sort of ingrained with it and an instrument of it as well. So I do agree that I think they were a sort of an autonomous force, and I think it's just difficult for humanity as a species now to think of it, because they've been gone, or at least not as visible as they once were, which is also accounted for in the mythologies recently. They account for sort of going away.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we talked about last week, which is why do these things, why has all this kind of slowed down? In general, at least it seems to have slowed down. I'm looking at the chat here. Joey mentioned something else again, going back to the changing of the shape and everything. that exact thing happened to two of the people I spoke of. One of them, the older of two brothers. A plane manifested very close overhead. No remembrance of incoming sound, and after becoming an orb that passed between them, continued on and zipped off. And you hear that so much about these things. They and appearing as planes, or at least somewhat plane shaped like a plane, shaped like helicopters, and then just doing weird things like hovering in one place in the sky, just not moving. So all these kinds of things that you hear about with the objects, whatever they are, that are in the sky, as well. So yeah, that is really amazing, and so yeah, I think there's a lot here, and so that I do wonder. I mean, are is are the things that people see today, are they the same? Are they different? Are they continuing on the same? Are they the same force or entities that people saw in those ancient times? Because if it's energy, then maybe, but it's hard to know. So, and then with these objects that are seen in space, do they come and go? I've heard accounts of that, of people seeing orbs come up out of the ground and go into space, or the opposite. So again, all these things. It's really also ironic to me how I've heard accounts of orbs, or even other things, happening one way and then happening in reverse in another account. And I think that's really just a fascinating side point to all that, which is, are they coming and going? It seems like whatever's out there, it does seem to come and go. The question, of course, is how far.
Yeah, I speculate along the same lines as Jen. I start thinking about things like the para elementals and the quasi elementals. Just you have the idea of the elemental plane of earth, fire, air, and water, but also along their borders, there's para elemental of steam between fire and water, and paramental, a quasi elemental plane of ice between negative energy and air. So it makes me wonder if there are entities that are autonomous that come from these planes of existence where of mineral, of lightning, the border between positive energy and air, and these things are like entities that have a certain level of intelligence, and that they occasionally slip into our prime material plane that's comprised of all of these special elemental planes and such. So, but because the way they come and go, like you were talking about, James, and how they arrive or leave, whatever, and how they manifest, and the various things that they do while they're here.
Yeah, and the way some of them seem to be interested in us and interacting, and then you can divide that into, some are interested in having communication, and others just do seem to want to mess with us. At least that's how it appears to us humans, and that's the other thing we have to keep in mind, is that we're always applying human ideas and thoughts and motives and emotions to other beings out there that may not have those same kinds of things going on, and however they're thinking or reacting. So looking at the chat here, Derek, Night Stalker, welcome in as well. He says, I wonder how much of it is about the reaction with us. Yes, as well. And the feeding on energy and on emotions and all these things, to where they do, they'll do things like frighten people, but they don't often, anyway, not in every case, they don't always actually permanently affect the person physically. So, but these things happen over and over again with people. Also, Derek says, if a plasmoid manifested in the forest and nobody was around, would it make an orb? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Go ahead, Derek.
No, I was agreeing. Yeah, it would. That's energy dissipates in the most easiest form that it can. So it's going to be a sphere because any other geometrical form is a higher geometry and would cause more energy. So that's why planets are round and stars are spherical and all that, because once the energy is distributed through angular momentum, the efficient shape for energy to form in is a spherical shape.
That's
That's
amazing. And I've heard. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
that he
Jen.
made. That's an incredible point that he made, that it comes across the way that he was describing the geometry of it and everything. And just I agree that that is an extremely important point, because there are descriptions of the sort of the geometry of, for example, Metatron or many of the other angels, that they account for the geometry being so complex, and that they are almost, because of the geometry itself, they are in a different dimension, a sort of a fourth or fifth or a different dimension, or maybe even lower, maybe going further down, actually. So I think that's an incredible point, that it's not really taken into consideration. It's the form that's taken most easily, but it's also the most taking into account human eyesight, which I've always thought was really interesting. They've recently discovered that the brain emits a sort of light, that it glows in the dark even. And there is actually an interpretation of the light coming from within the human brain is generating a type of light. That's incredible. Something that I had never considered, but it's something they've recently discovered. And I don't have the article available to me right now, but you could sort of just, research into that and discover how interesting that is, and to account of how light refracting off of uh, different geometric shapes and the way that they would appear. So the point right there that Eric just made, I think, is extremely important, as far as I'm trying to conceive of how complex could these entities be, and then a projection of human sort of consciousness and what that might appear as well. And did we become entangled in that, as far as what do we appear as on different dimensions, and the interactions, and what do they look like? And
Uh-oh. Did we lose you? You went quiet there, Jen. So
all
hopefully.
of these.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, sorry. What
That's
happened?
okay. You cut out for a second. That happens.
Well,
I'm
anyway,
glad.
though, it's just been incredible to have Eric here talking about this with us, because I think
Yeah.
that he brought up a lot of things that I wouldn't have really necessarily thought of at all, had he not mentioned it. So, but definitely is essential to understanding the phenomenon. And I think I underestimated the phenomenon myself, and just as a normal individual wandering around, that it is often overlooked, the significance of what it might actually be, and how prominent it is, in effect with everything else. For sure.
Yeah.
It-
And I was just thinking too, and I'll get back to you in a second here, Eric, but I've heard of accounts of people seeing, there's accounts of people seeing these orbs of light, but then having things appear in or on them or around them, like lines on them. Sometimes the lines are even moving. I've heard of people seeing faces in or on orbs as well. So all these things do seem to play, and it is amazing. I always wondered why the sphere. I never even thought to look into deeply into that why the shape. But so yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's go around and do final thoughts here for this show, and we can always come back to this some other time too. But go ahead, Eric, and we'll go to Jen, and then we'll wrap this up.
Well, when I'm considering spheres and thinking of the energy conservation state that we see them in when they are taking the shape of a sphere, and considering the descriptions of the Nuremberg broadsheet where they described cylinders and crosses, excuse me, all in that time period, it seems like they were able to manifest higher forms of geometry then,
Mm-hmm.
and that this makes me think of Edwin Albert, who was a English schoolmaster in 1884, who wrote a book called Flatland, and it was about this geometric shapes, and the higher you were in the hierarchy of society, facets you had all the way up to like a dodecahedron and that sort of thing. And he published this book. It was a satire on society at the time, but shortly after that, like within a few years after that, Kluza and Klein, who may or may not have read this book, developed the first model of multidimensional space superstructure that the universe on a fine scale comprised of. And that directly leads to M theory, a branch of superstring theory that's still going strong today. So in which once you start talking about superstring theory and M theory, you get into this 11-dimensional space and other dimensional spaces where it gets very complicated in terms of higher geometry. But all of these concepts, like the Pythagorean solids, and have been around since ancient times. The idea of geometry holding power as it takes its perfect shape up the ladder, up that Jacob's ladder of polyhedral shapes that are equal on all sides and distribute energy equally on all sides. And the idea of being able to manifest these powerful shapes in our realm might have been easier back then, may have not be as easy now after a battle, but now we see a lot of spheres more than we see these other shapes. That's my final thought.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for being on the show, Eric, and we'll close out here in a minute with Jen. But thank you as well for Eric for also doing all the research beforehand. Never even knowing you'd be using it on a podcast. I appreciate
really
that.
wanted to. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're welcome to hang out still, or you can drop down to the audience, whatever you want to do. But because I'm gonna do an experience show after this, and you all are welcome to call in for that one. It's a Patreon show, so we can do a mix of call-ins and then the experiences I read. So, but yeah, I'll you can meet up if and I already did. There we go. See, we got pros here, as Mike would say. But yeah, so and I did want to read one thing here that's from Derek, the Night Stalker. I mean, more if we aren't around to see it, would it manifest at all? And yeah, that's a good point too. And then definitely true about the sphere. But yeah, so go ahead, Jen, with whatever you think here, and then we'll wrap this up.
I mean, I think that the autonomy of these intelligences, that they are not reliant, that they are perhaps, maybe they were a part of the creation of, maybe they're sort of primeval force, a sort of the instigators of existence, at least for human intelligence and variation of the species, or maybe just that they somehow began to interact. That account of them interacting, these other forces interacting. For example, like I've mentioned before, with the angels, the fae, whatever you want to call them, the jinn out of Islamic and Abrahamic religions, all of these accounts, and then over into other regions of the world, they make accounts for these that I don't have names for. The fact that they have been interacting from a distance and from that kind of scope of us observing them and being aware that they are aware of us and separate from other creatures, but they even may have been interacting with them, but they seem to be a primeval force of interaction that integrated with their part of this world, but that has come into some kind of collision with humanity and ultimately with the cosmic forces that has somehow like forced them sort of out into the scape. They are now reappearing again, which I think is really fascinating. I think the shape, the geometry, and just the matter, the math of it all, that it has become essential to, I guess, the human world as we see it, and every other system that we have in place that we may have received from these intelligences, which is really incredible to take account of as far as what the influence is. But I never really, I really thought too. I mean, I always had thought about it, but I'm glad we covered this topic because I think we really did kind of. I think with Eric's help and the consideration of all these ideas that we have, at least I have, I feel like I've, got a lot to think about. I think it's very interesting, and I had a great time visiting. And I'm glad Eric came to be on the show this evening, and I've enjoyed it very much, James. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And yeah, it's good to talk to you as always. And you're welcome to meet up and stay or head out if you need to. But either way, thank you again. And so yeah, let's see here. Looking at the chat here, we have one more comment here to read, and it's from Derek. It might clue us into the location of origin based on shape, how far up or down the dimensional ladder they are, appearing as platonic solids versus weird, many-angled ones like Lovecraftian entities are called sometimes. Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you all for being here and listening in. And for those of you that are here in the live chat, you're welcome to still hang out, stay, and listen in more. I'm doing a Patreon show right after this of experiences. And I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Thank you all again. And take care.